Hello, everyone. You may notice that the apartment is looking a lot more barren. Yeah, the move is underway, and actually, as of a few hours ago, I am now officially a homeowner. We closed today. Thank the Lord. It's finally over. I am now officially a homeowner. Well, it's not over yet. I've still got to move all my junk over there, and I was over at the place earlier today, and I made a checklist of things. It's like, all right, I need to get this, I need to get this, I need to get this. First thing I realized, it's like, oh, I really need to put new locks on some of the doors here. Some of these doors are, some of these locks are a little shabby. And it's like, I'm gonna put some new locks on this, because I'm a very security conscious guy, and no motherfuckers getting into my home without putting forth some effort. But yeah, I'm really super happy that we finally closed and we can move on and get this underway. I'm gonna give you guys some advice if you want to get into home ownership. 3 things to avoid. Learn from my mistakes. Okay, 3 things. 1, do not get out-of-state lenders. I tried an out-of-state lender. It was not a good idea. Terrible idea. Nothing against them. It was just caused a lot of confusion and slowed down the process, and actually caused the closure to be postponed twice because of just stupid BS that didn't need to be a thing. And the out-of-state lender, that was a lot of the issues, that they just didn't understand how things ran in this county, in this area. You know, so avoid that. Also, don't try to buy a home around wintertime because you got to deal with the elements. That's a problem. Or any time, you know, depending on where you live. Like, any time where you're going to get hit with snow. Sometimes, I guess, in some places that's unavoidable. But, you know, it's just try your best not to buy a home around where it snows a lot, and during a time of the year where it's not snowing, because that's going to cause some problems too. We were supposed to close on Monday, and we got postponed again because of all the snow we got hit with this past weekend. Freaking crazy. So there's that. And lastly, don't try to buy a home when you got like a really awesome Christmas present, and you kind of want to spend your time on the Christmas present and blow off the adulting stuff, but you got all this paperwork you got to do to close on a condo. I got the Super Nintendo Classic for Christmas, and that's been taking up a lot of my time. Actually, it's weird. The 3 games that I really got hooked onto were Kirby's Dream Course, the fucking Kirby golf game, which I played once in a hotel back in grade school. We were on a trip, and the hotel was offering games, and that was, for some reason, my siblings and I, that was the game we settled on, was Kirby's Dream Course. And we were like, it's okay. It's just golf, basically. But, and I was playing it on the Super Nintendo Classic. I was like, this game's stupid. Meanwhile, cue the SpongeBob title card, you know, 5 hours later. And I'm like, wow, this is really fun, actually. So that one, Contra 3, of course, because the Contra games are fucking great. And that one's like a quick and easy, well, it's not easy. I mean, the Contra games are notoriously hard, but that one's kind of a quick, you don't have to learn anything, you don't have to do anything, just jump right into the game and start playing, and it's easy to pick up. So that one I got hooked onto. And the third one I've gotten hooked onto is one that I never played before. And I'm not a huge like RPG game guy, so for me to get hooked onto this is weird, but considering the shirt, you know I am a Mario fan. Super Mario RPG, actually really good. I really enjoyed it. I'm really enjoying it. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm like, wow, this is a really good game. Maybe I should play other RPG games. Maybe I wasn't giving them a fair shot. You know, maybe I'll get into Final Fantasy, which is also on there. I'll get into Secret of Mana, I believe, is also on there. So, yeah, I've got some other things. Maybe Super Mario is a good baby step to getting me into RPG games. Who knows? Of course, I realize most of these games are over 2 decades old, but fuck you. That's my point. But anyway, if you're getting to home ownership, avoid hobbies, avoid bad weather, and avoid out-of-state lenders. It will make it a lot easier for you, I promise. So that's my advice. So before I get into the main topics I wanted to talk about today, I do want to apologize for my last video as I screwed up quite a bit. There was a mistake with the audio at one point in the video where it cut out, and this was brought to my attention. Unfortunately, I had no intentions of fixing it. I'm not going to fix it now. It's like, nope, damage is done. It's fine. Just let it stand as is. I'll do my best to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. I also forgot to list the top 10 matches from December 2018. I'm not going to mention them here because it's like, whatever, we're already halfway through January, it's fine. But I did put the list in the description of my last video. So you want to know what my top 10 favorite matches were for December of 2018? They're there in the description of the description field of the last video. Even though I don't talk about them in the video itself. You know, my mistake. Sorry, but that ended up being an hour-long video, and things slipped through the cracks, and that was something that slipped through the cracks. One more thing before I get into the main topics. February 1st is drawing near. You guys still have time to vote for which WrestleMania matches you want me to live stream as part of my WrestleMania live stream series heading into WrestleMania. And, you know, as I've said before, I'm going to be watching 2 matches from each WrestleMania. One match I pick, and one match you guys vote on and pick yourselves. So, enjoy, have fun. I have not checked the results yet. Be kind. I put some horrible matches on those polls. Like, really bad ones. All I ask is that you be kind and pick the good ones. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. I mean, you don't want me to suffer, do you? Do you? I don't think you do. No, y'all are nice guys. But, anyway, let's get into the topics of this video. And there's a lot to cover here because I originally planned for all of this to be separate videos. But then I said, fuck it. I'm going to be busy with moving and all this other stuff. I have time now. I'll just knock it all out in one long video. So this one's probably going to go long. But let's jump right into the wrestling stuff first. I'm going to review a wrestling show I had absolutely no intention of reviewing because I didn't even know it was happening until about 2 or 3 days before it aired, and that was NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool. I had no idea the NXT UK brand was already set to do a TakeOver special. I was like, oh, I guess I'll watch that. Now, granted, I haven't watched NXT UK, the weekly show, in months. I think I stopped watching around episodes 7, 8, or 9, somewhere in that range. It just wasn't, the show just wasn't grabbing me. It was just kind of like, not bad, but just kind of like, it just, by the books, straightforward wrestling without like a hot angle or a hot, you know, intriguing character or something to really get me invested in what was going on. It was just a straightforward wrestling show, and I'm like, you know, that's fine, I guess, but it's not like something that's going to keep me chomping at the bits. All right, now I need to see what happens next, and now I need to see where this is going. And there was nothing going on the weekly show that was kind of grabbing my attention. So, personally, I've said this before, I was kind of against the idea of doing a UK show because, again, it introduces more titles, more championships than the WWE needs. And it also kind of like spreads the NXT brand a little thin to have another show calling itself NXT. And certain guys like Pete Dunne and Rhea Ripley and Mustache Mountain and several other guys who were very talented guys are now not going to be able to appear on the other NXT show, or maybe they will, which if they're still appearing on NXT, it's like, well, then what's the point of doing the UK show if you're going to have them on both? So, you know, a lot of things going on there that kind of killed my interest in the brand. But I decided to watch TakeOver because I was in a really bad mood on Saturday. Really bad mood because I could see the bad weather coming and the snow. We got hit with a lot of snow, and I knew that was going to postpone closing on my condo another day. I just knew it was like, this is going to impact Monday, isn't it? And I was getting mad. And sure enough, I got the call Sunday night. It's like, yeah, we're gonna postpone it another day. I'm like, oh my god, it's been postponed twice already. My real estate agent told me right after we wrapped up, she's like, I have never had a case where closing on the property got postponed 3 times. I've never had that happen before. It's like, well, lucky me. And it wasn't her fault. It wasn't really anybody's. It was actually more my fault than anything else because even though I did everything I was told, I kind of did it in like a stupid way. If that makes any sense. But anyway, I decided to watch NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool. And a lot of the reviews I read were mostly positive. Some people were kind of ho-hum on it because I think they're kind of like me. They're just not interested in the NXT UK brand to begin with, so they were just kind of like, on the show regardless. I thought it was pretty good overall. I didn't hate it. I wasn't miserable. Some things I really liked about it. I'm probably not going to give it as glowing a review as some other people have, but I did enjoy the show. I thought it was pretty good and very Perfectly solid wrestling show from start to finish. Not a lot of complaints, but with that, let me just go ahead and pull the card up and make sure I've got this, the right match order. We opened up with the match of the night, or at least my favorite match on the show. The tag team match to crown the first ever NXT UK Tag Team Champions. Zach Gibson and James Drake defeated Mustache Mountain, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate. I would have bet on Tyler Bate and Trent Seven winning this thing. But Zach Gibson and James Drake took the win here. And you know, I'm the type of guy, it's probably better to put the belts on heels. Allows for a better storyline build up that way. And I thought this was just a really good tag team match. Just, you know, if you like tag team wrestling, if you like tag team action, this is the match for you. This was just a very good, well-crafted tag team match between four guys that went out there and basically stole the show in the opening match. Did this one really... I really like the finish, how they took out Tyler Bate with like a suicide dive doomsday device combo. I thought that was a really cool spot. And ultimately, heels got the win after a really long match, too. I think this went like almost half an hour. Let me see. I have it on Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, this went 23 minutes and 45 seconds, which... sounds a little short because it felt like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It just felt like the match was like a marathon match, and all four guys were just pouring their heart and souls into it. But overall, I thought this was a really good match, best match on the show, and I really enjoyed it. So huzzah, great stuff. Second match was supposed to be Jordan Devlin taking on Travis Banks, but Jordan Devlin attacked Banks before the match and injured him, leaving him without an opponent. It was then determined that the surprise appearance of Finn Balor would be used to fill Banks' spot, and Finn Balor then defeated Jordan Devlin. I want to make sure I'm getting his name right. And yeah, it was nice to see Finn Balor. I thought that was a nice little surprise, and considering he's getting the Universal title shot at the Royal Rumble, I guess it was a good idea to like put him on something to make him look good and promote him. I thought this match maybe went a little too long. It was basically just supposed to be a way to make Finn Balor look good and kind of pop the crowd after a really long match. Just kind of give him some, like, this fun little pop thing. So, hey, Finn Balor showed up. I mean, by default, he was the biggest star on the whole thing. So, it was, that part of it was certainly cool, but the match, I felt, went a little too long, and, maybe Devlin got a little too much control over Finn, where I felt like it should have been more of a straight-up squash. And, you know, I guess they don't want to make the young talent look that bad, but, I mean, how... Is Devlin really setting the world on fire right now on NXT UK? I don't know. I haven't been watching the show, but I actually, when I saw him, it's like, I don't remember seeing him in the episodes that I watched. I don't remember seeing him, and if I did see him, he obviously didn't leave much of an impression, and this match didn't really help with that either, but... really, this was just a showcase for Finn. I think if you cut the match in half, it probably would have worked better. But overall, it was cool to see Finn pop the crowd, and it worked for that. So I can't fault it too much. Next up was Dave Mastiff versus Eddie Dennis in a no disqualification match. This was a very basic kind of hardcore match. It hit all the spots you would have expected them to hit. And Eddie basically trying to show, look how strong I am. I can take this big fat fuck and throw him around and do big things to him. So that was kind of neat. It was a fine match for what it was. Obviously, WWE being what it is, it's not going to go super, super violent or super, super hardcore. But for what it was, I thought it was fine. It was perfectly solid. I kind of like Dave Mastiff. He's like he's kind of a throwback. I was like, oh, look at that. He's a big, fat fuck. I mean, I don't want to say he's fat, but he's like just a big, like... boulder of a man that goes out there and just bull rushes people, and I kind of enjoy that. So he's kind of fun to watch. But the match was fine, and again, being a no disqualification match, and they used weapons and various other things that helped it stand out from everything else on the show. So it was memorable for that. And Dave Mastiff got the win, which didn't surprise me at all. Next up was the women's title match. Toni Storm defeating Rhea Ripley to become the new NXT UK Women's Champion. This one, I don't want to say it was bad, but it felt a little off at points. I don't know, like, I can't quite, it's one of those matches, kind of like EC3 and Velveteen Dream from a recent TakeOver, where it's like, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's just not clicking, and it's not clicking with the audience either, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know why it is. It's just, it's happening, it's not really clicking as well as it should, and you throw these two girls in there and you expect them to put on something pretty good. Toni Storm is pretty good. Rhea Ripley's, she's basically this, you know, maybe a little too similar to Shayna Baszler, but still really good. And you expect them to have a really good match, but instead it's just kind of like, they just kind of wrestle around and act out the formula, and then Toni wins. And that's it. And it was just kind of, I don't know. Again, not a bad match. It's just one that wasn't as good as I was expecting it to be. I don't know what exactly.
Sorry, I don't know that.
I didn't even say Alexa. I didn't even say Echo. What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? I'm not going to cut this out. Anyway. Yeah, the women's title match, it was just kind of there. It didn't really, didn't pain me in any way, but it was just kind of a match that was there to fill time and get a title change. And I don't want to sound like cruel about it, but it was just kind of like, it just didn't grab me. Kind of like a microcosm for NXT UK as a whole. It's just not grabbing me. But I guess it was cool to see Toni Storm win a belt. I guess that was neat. She was by far the most over girl in NXT UK, at least from what I could tell. She was the one that had the biggest reputation coming into this brand. So it makes sense that she would be the champion. So there you go. So if you're a Toni Storm fan, absolutely check this match out. She wins the fucking belt. That's awesome. Then we get the main event. Pete Dunne versus Joe Coffey for the NXT UK Championship. Which, have they rebranded that, the NXT UK Championship? Or they just got the WWE UK Champion. Okay, so they haven't rebranded it. But I've heard mixed things about this match. Some reviews have said it's amazing. Some reviews have said it was overly long and self-indulgent. I'm more in the middle. Like, I didn't love it. I would say I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good main event match overall. But some of the criticisms against it I think are fair. It did get to a point at the end where they were kicking out of stuff left and right. And I was like, guys, this is getting silly. Like, come on. Like, come on, guys. This is getting... When Joe Coffey kicked out of the third bitter end, I'm like, guys. Come on, guys. And it actually looked like at the end they were trying to do this spot in the corner. I think Pete Dunne was going to go for a top Hurricane Rana or some kind of suplex or something. And they kept falling off the corner. And it happened once. Joe Coffey fell off. And then I think they tried to do the spot again. Go back and watch it and see if you got the same impression I did. I felt like once Joe Coffey fell off and hit the ringside area, which thank goodness he didn't get hurt, they tried to go to the spot again, and then they both fell over. Again, thank God nobody got hurt, but it was kind of giving me flashback to Angle and Lesnar at WrestleMania, only without like the life-threatening injury, where it was like they had this really cool idea for a finish or something, and it just didn't work, and they couldn't get it to work, and they just kind of had to make something up on the fly towards the end. Again, that was the impression I got as they were trying to set up, because it felt like they were taking a long time to set up there in the corner, and they went to it again. I felt like they had some big spot plan that just didn't come to fruition for whatever reason. But other than that, like, you know, I thought the match was generally enjoyable. Pete Dunne has generally really good matches, and this was no exception. I did enjoy it. I thought it was a pretty good main event. Maybe a couple missteps like the ones I just mentioned, but overall I thought it was a really enjoyable main event with nice down and dirty wrestling with Pete Dunne once again getting a victory, continuing his long-ass reign, currently the longest reigning champion in the WWE right now. Really cool stuff. But then we ended on a bit of a surprise as Walter made his debut. And now, I've never seen Walter work, so I know next to nothing about it. I've just heard the name. I know of him. I thought his theme music was cool. I always love it. I always mark when somebody uses classical music as their interesting. Not that I want everybody to come out to Beethoven or Mozart or Chopin or anything like that, or Wagner or anything like that. But actually, who's the composer for his? I'm going to look that up. I'm going to like, who was the composer? It was Symphony Number 9. It was like Dvorak, I think it is. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Dvorak. I'm just going to say Dvorak. I don't know. Yeah, I know Chopin, but I don't know Dvorak. So I could be wrong. But I do kind of like it when people come out to classical music. I actually like that Daniel Bryan came out to Flight of the Valkyries until they gave it that shitty remix. what you gonna do? But yeah, that was a nice little thing to end the show on. I was like, okay, we got this big guy with some notoriety debuting. Maybe that'll be something. But overall, I did enjoy the show. I thought the tag match was really good. I thought most of the matches were good. I liked the main event quite a bit. But it wasn't, I don't know if it was good enough to make me want to tune in and see NXT UK on a weekly basis again. Where it's kind of like, you know, as a detour to kind of distract me from all the other shit that was going on this weekend. It was good for that. It was generally a good time. I would even give it a B overall as like a really solid wrestling show. Do I want to watch more NXT UK as a result of it? Maybe for Walter. Maybe I'd tune in to see Walter just to see what his deal is. But other than that, I don't know if it's completely won me over to the brand or make me want to watch it on a weekly basis again. But I did think it was a generally entertaining show and just really good from start to finish. There's very little to complain about on this show. One thing that was damn near perfect is the other thing I'm going to review from the WWE Network. A documentary that they released. Chasing Magic, the Nigel McGuiness story, which was a big surprise when I saw it pop up on the WWE Network, on my network queue. I was like, wait, what? Nigel McGuiness? You're doing a doc on Nigel McGuiness? And I was like, that's kind of neat. I'll watch that. And sure enough, I watch it, and they got ROH footage. They got some of his TNA footage, and I'm like, oh boy, they went all out with this. This is neat. This is very cool. I'm happy about this. And it told Nigel's story very well. And I think if you're a fan of Nigel McGuiness, you're really going to want to watch this thing, and you're going to enjoy it. If you've never seen Nigel McGuinness work, if you're too young and you only know him as an announcer on NXT or the UK brand, I think it's definitely worth checking out to give you an education on who this guy is, what his background is, and how he came to be an announcer in the WWE. And it's actually a bit of a tragedy in a way, because Nigel, for a time, I mean, when you look at the mid-2000s and the guys that were, you know, for lack of a better term, internet darlings at that time, you had Samoa Joe, you had AJ Styles, you had American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, you had bunch of, I guess Generico and Steen were a little later, but CM Punk was one of those guys. And then you had Nigel McGuinness. He was right there in that same class of guys. And I would argue as a worker, he was probably better than most, if not all of them. I really liked his style. And unfortunately, he just never got that big break in like a mainstream level. And they talk about that. He almost made it to WWE, but things got in the way. He got a big run in TNA, started really well with matches against Kurt Angle, which that first match they had I still think is one of the best matches in TNA history. And it looked like big things were going to come for him. And then Hogan and Bischoff showed up, and it was like Desmond Wolfe was one of the guys that kind of got flushed down the drain as a result of that. And his departure from TNA was also really weird, which they talked about and helped fill in some of the blanks there. It was, you know, it's just he just couldn't catch a break. It was just really sad, and he should have gotten that big run, and he never really did. So this documentary is kind of a way to tell his story and give his insight on things and what he thought and what he was feeling during those time periods. It was also really cool as someone who's watched his work in the past. It was cool to see them highlight his stuff, and you know, oh my god, they used ROH footage. Oh my god, they used TNA footage. The one that made me happy is they gave a huge spotlight. They put a huge spotlight on the match he had with Danielson, where they unified the titles, and I was like, yes, because for those of you who've watched my channel, I did a video on my top 10 favorite Ring of Honor matches. What was my number one favorite? It was Danielson versus McGuinness in the unified match where they unified the world title and the pure title. The pure title, one of my favorite things that that ROH ever did. I don't care what anybody says. I love that title. I love the concept of it, and it should have been allowed to survive. But we did get that awesome unification match out of it. And I was really happy that they gave that match a huge spotlight on the documentary. So I thought the documentary is one of the best pieces of work WWE's done since they've started doing these things, like these network specials and network documentaries and things like that. And again, it was somebody that I was familiar with, but I didn't know all the answers of what led to his retirement and why he didn't go to WWE or why his run in TNA was cut short. And they talk about that stuff. And so it was really nice as a fan to get those answers. And I think if you've never seen Nigel McGuinness work before, this is a chance to kind of at least get an idea of who he is. I thought the documentary was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. Great piece of work from the WWE. Great piece of content for the network. And I love it when... It's things like that even though I don't watch Raw and SmackDown weekly anymore, that's one of the reasons I keep my subscription to the WWE Network, because you get things like that. And in addition to NXT and access to all the old archives, you also get like these really cool documentaries like that. So, real nice piece of work from WWE. And I think if you have not seen the Nigel McGuiness documentary on the network, I highly recommend checking it out because it is great. One of the best things they've produced since I've had my network subscription, personally. It's probably my favorite doc they've ever done. From what I've seen, anyway. Just great piece of work. Loved it. So next up, I guess that kind of wraps up the wrestling talk and the wrestling-related things. So if you're only here for the wrestling stuff, you can tune out right now. But there are a few more things I do want to cover and I do want to talk about. I watched 2 movies on Netflix this weekend. One of them is not going to surprise you at all. One of them you're going to go, wait, didn't you already watch that? Like, you didn't watch it when everybody else did? What the hell is that? My neighbor is doing something stupid. But anyway, the 2 movies I watched on Netflix this weekend were Godzilla the Planet Eater, the final installment of the Godzilla anime trilogy. Again, me watching that should not come as a surprise to anybody. The most surprising thing or what you guys think should be the most surprising thing is that I didn't watch it the night it dropped last Wednesday. I had to wait until the weekend, but again, life got in the way. Busy shit. So, the other movie I finally watched Bird Box, which had been memed to holy hell everywhere online, and people were raving about Bird Box and saying that, made it feel like it was like the can't miss movie of internet streaming. It was like, this is the movie to watch. And again, the memes were great. I'm not going to lie, especially NFL memes during playoff season. I mean, they've mined that thing for so much gold. It's ridiculous. But, so I'm going to review both movies. And let's start with, Godzilla the Planet Eater, since I watched that one first and, being a huge Godzilla fan, of course I was going to watch it. I actually watched it twice, once in English, once in Japanese. Tells you, like, so now I can say I've seen every Godzilla movie at least twice each. That's how I roll. Now, to recap the other 2 entries of the anime trilogy that's been going on Netflix, and these movies got theatrical releases in Japan. These are joint efforts from Toho Animation and Polygon Pictures, I think they're called. And the animation is more of a 3D style, and not like I guess, for lack of a better term, like a traditional 2D anime style, which is what I wanted. Actually, when I saw Castlevania on Netflix, I was like, man, why can't the Godzilla anime look like this? And again, when I looked at the new She-Ra and what that show looked like, it's like, that looks like it took a page out of Adventure Time. Why can't it look like Castlevania? Look at that. That looks incredible. I want it to look like that. Why does it look like Adventure Time when I want it to look like something way cooler? But I digress. I'm just going to be comparing every piece of animation unfavorably to Castlevania now, because that show's amazing, by the way. Check it out. Probably the best video game adaptation I've ever seen. But anyway, they went for more of a 3D animation style, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's like, alright, I'll watch it anyway because it's Godzilla and maybe they'll do something cool. The first 2 entries, Planet of Monsters and City on the Edge of Battle, detail how how humanity was driven from Earth by Godzilla and the other monsters. And Haruo, who is like the lead character throughout this entire thing, he leads a mission to return to Earth and kill Godzilla, because he has this plan to kill Godzilla and take the planet back. Unfortunately, through some techno-babbly bullshit, the humans were away from Earth for 20,000 years instead of what they thought to be like 20 or 25 or something like that. So, time, wormhole bullshit, techno-babbly nonsense, Star Trek, blah, 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 blah. So they wind up like way further into the future than they ever expected, and the planet has evolved around Godzilla. So Godzilla is basically the alpha organism on Earth, and the Earth's ecosystem has grown accustomed to him, and you have creatures like the Servum, which are like these winged parasite creatures that spawn from Godzilla, and you get other smaller Godzilla. Well, smaller. It's ultimately revealed that the original Godzilla that was on Earth has evolved and grown up to about 300 meters tall, and the smaller Godzillas that spawned from him are much smaller. And but they were about the same size that Godzilla was at the time that humanity was driven from Earth. So, Planet of Monsters was okay, but didn't take full advantage of its premise. I didn't feel like, okay, it's Planet of Monsters. I expected to see a ton of monsters, and you don't really see that. You don't really get to see a whole planet infested with monsters. You just see the Servum and Godzilla. And Godzilla's barely in the movie because he's really not revealed until the very, very end of the film. And I was like, okay, but there's some interesting ideas here. Let's see where this plays out. Or let's see how this plays out. Then you get to City on the Edge of Battle, and they discover the corpse of Mechagodzilla, which they were going to use to fight Godzilla back in the day, but it was never finished, and so the remains of Mechagodzilla were just left there. And it turned out Mechagodzilla was also evolving, because it was made with this substance called nanometal. And the nanometal kept spreading and infecting the area around it and building like a city around it. So it's basically like a city controlled by Mechagodzilla's brain. And I thought, okay, so that's a really interesting and cool idea. Are they going to do like... I thought where it was leading was a liquid metal Mechagodzilla, which would have been awesome. T-1000 Mechagodzilla style. I would have totally been on board for that. Unfortunately, you get all this build-up, and no Mechagodzilla at the end of the movie, which a lot of fans were disappointed with. I was disappointed with it. And I wouldn't have been disappointed if they didn't plaster Mechagodzilla all over the marketing. Again, look at the poster for that film and tell me that they weren't promising Mechagodzilla, okay? He's basically looming over the poster and looming over all the characters in Godzilla, and we all thought that Mechagodzilla was going to be in this film, and he's really not. And so that was a major dropping of the ball on Toho's part on that one. And, you know, we're 2 movies into this thing, and we really haven't had a monster fight yet. And it's like, oh my god, what's the friggin' holdup, guys? You had 3 movies. We should be getting, like, a ton of these, right? And it's called Planet of Monsters. And the entire time this has been going on, they've set up Mothra with this, like, group of native humans that are still on Earth, but have kind of, like, evolved into creatures that can communicate with their god, the egg, who we all know, yeah, okay, it's Mothra. And it got to a point where, like, oh, we're promising Ghidorah, and we're promising Mothra, and after what happened with Mechagodzilla, I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, it was like, I was kind of jaded by the time I got to the 3rd movie. And you get to the 3rd movie, and it's called The Planet Eater. And at this point, the film was being promoted as Godzilla will fight this new version of King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah has also undergone an evolution, which I'll talk about that in a bit. But my expectations were not very high for this film, mainly because of how the second one ended, and it was really kind of a buzzkill that happened. And I was like, man, they really kind of... The anime trilogy should have been really cool, and it's just kind of like, there's some interesting ideas in there. And I feel like... And again, I've been marathoning Star Trek on Netflix as well. I've actually gotten through all of TOS. And because I enjoyed TOS so much, and I had seen Star Trek, by the way, I'd seen Star Trek in the past, but I never really sat down and watched the entire show. And now I can say I've seen all of the original series, and I was like, oh, cool. I want to watch the animated show, because I had more time with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. I'm not going to turn that down. So I watched the animated show. I actually enjoyed that more than I thought I would. And now I'm into Next Gen, and I'm in season 1, which admittedly is kind of a slog, but I know that Next Gen gets much better. So I've seen better episodes from Next Gen, so I know it gets better. But we'll get there once I'm past season 1. But having watched all this Star Trek recently, I'm kind of like, I wonder if Star Trek was kind of an inspiration for this movie or this series of movies where there's a lot of like long sequences of the characters talking. It's the Earthlings are on a spaceship with and that's something I should have mentioned in the recap. It isn't just Earthlings and humans on the spaceship in this group. There's also 2 sets of aliens that Earth made an alliance with back in the day to help fight the monsters, and ultimately all of them failed, and they all fled at the same time. The Bullasuludo, who are heavily inspired by the black hole aliens from the Mechagodzilla films of the 1970s, and the Exif, who are inspired by the Planet X aliens from Godzilla vs. Monster Zero and Godzilla Final Wars. So, But yeah, so that's a nice little reference. But I wonder if there was like some kind of a Star Trek influence here going on here, where all these people, multi-race, multi-alien beings coexisting to explore what's essentially a new world now, and dealing with everything there, with long talks about philosophy and you know, emotion and various other things. So I don't know if that was deliberate or if I've just been watching too much Star Trek lately and I'm just seeing too many parallels. But Star Trek, at its best, excels when its character's talking. And that's especially true of the animated show, because the animation on that show is limited as fuck, but it didn't really matter because Star Trek is at its best when the characters are just sitting around talking to each other, especially when they have something interesting to talk about. And this trilogy has some really cool ideas. The Planet of Monsters concept, very cool. And I'm going to get into Ghidorah in a minute. I'm getting there, trust me. But there's some really neat ideas. I love the idea of the monsters being presented in a way that they've been allowed to evolve for thousands of years. So when we see them on this new world, they're completely different from what we'd ever seen before. But they still feel like themselves. They feel like a natural extension of what we knew the monsters to be. Godzilla Earth being 300 meters tall and being like the head alpha organism of planet Earth. He still feels like Godzilla in a lot of ways. And, you know, my whole idea with Mechagodzilla, like, you know, he evolved and turned into this entire city. And I think if they had gone the liquid Mechagodzilla route, liquid metal Mechagodzilla route, I think that would have been really friggin' cool. And it would have been different, but it would have been, okay, that's a new take on Mechagodzilla. I can deal with that. And Mechagodzilla is completely different in each appearance anyway. So, I mean, Ready Player One, that version didn't even look like anything that came from the pre-existing movies. So I would have been down for that. And, so yeah, a lot of interesting ideas. I just think that maybe the pacing is a bit too slow, and maybe the characters kind of talk in circles too much, where they're just kind of saying the same things over and over and over again. So it's not really, you're not getting those interesting Star Trek-esque dialogues between the characters. Also, it doesn't help that most of the characters aren't that great. The only ones that are even memorable are Haruo and Metphis, who's the lead Exif character, who really takes center stage in Planet Eater. And I guess, like, the native twins who are supposed to be references to the Mothra fairies, but they really don't have much of a defined personality either, not even in this film, where they get to do technically more. But anyway, we pick up with Planet Eater right where City on the Edge of Battle left off. Godzilla has destroyed Mechagodzilla City and is taking a big power nap, waiting for the next time where he can cause some damage. After suffering this defeat, the Exif, Metphis, has taken this opportunity to trick most of what's left of this human crew to join his cult and to follow his god, because his god, his one true god, can defeat Godzilla, and he forms kind of a cult around that whole idea, and using Haruo as kind of an example of humanity's indomitable spirit. And if you follow Haruo's example, it'll motivate our god to come here and take care of Godzilla. And ultimately that god, dun dun dun, it's King Ghidorah. This new version of King Ghidorah. And I will say that of the three films, this one is the best of the three, even though it has a lot of the same problems that the other two films had, where it's like, all right, the characters are talking in circles. They talked about this in the last scene. They're just kind of talking in circles here. There's also, some of the characters are very, very bland. The native twins in question, I feel like they would be really good characters if they were written properly, but as is, they're just kind of like cardboard cutout stand-ins. One of them even has sex with Haruo, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that we've ever gotten a sex scene in a Godzilla movie. Breaking barriers. breaking new ground, this anime trilogy is. We needed a sex scene in a Godzilla movie, but at first I was like, wait, I don't even know which twin that is. Which one is that? That's how, like, dull they were. But the real, like, meat and potatoes of the story is Metphis, who's basically taken center stage as the villain here, which we all knew he was a villain. I said it. Go watch my review of Planet of Monsters. I said this guy's going to be a Ghidorah cult leader villain. I mean, I could see it coming a mile away. But he's by far the most interesting and the most fun. and you know, the creepiest character. So when he finally does his full-blown heel turn, I'm like, okay, he's like finally getting what I predicted 2 movies ago, but this is kind of cool, and there's some really good scenes with him. So that stuff is actually pretty good. And Ghidorah, who I guess I'll talk about now, we never see Ghidorah's full body. But I think it kind of works. So basically what happens is Metphies does this unholy ceremony where he gets all the cult members together, and they summon King Ghidorah. And at first he comes out as like this shadow that slowly cuts off limbs and decapitates all the people in the room. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. This is a really cool scene. It's one of the best scenes in the anime trilogy, is Ghidorah's introduction. And then eventually 3 black holes / portals open up in the sky, and each one of Ghidorah's heads come out of the portals. And again, playing on the whole evolution idea, Ghidorah is so big and he's so evolved that his body can't fit on planet Earth. So it's like, the best you can do is have these 3 black holes where the heads are able to come down and kind of tangle around Godzilla, which makes for some really cool visuals, if nothing else. And we also learn that Ghidorah does not exist on our plane. He's got a non-physical form. So, like, none of the humans' devices can scan for him or pick him up on any kind of, like, radar system or anything. Like, bioelectrical system, nothing. He's just not showing up on any scanners because it's like he doesn't exist. And but all we can do is see him, and that's all you can see. And Godzilla, when Godzilla tries to fight him, he tries to hit him with the atomic breath, and the atomic breath curves. And it's like, oh my god, this is really friggin' cool. And Ghidorah wraps the 3 heads around Godzilla and tries to, like, absorb Godzilla. It's not really clear what he's trying to do, but I guess he was trying to absorb him. And he can bite Godzilla and tangle around him, but Godzilla tries to swipe at him, and his hand goes right through him, and his tail goes right through him. So it's like Godzilla's fighting a ghost. This is awesome. And I kind of like this whole, with the cult aspect and the whole, you know, kind of unholy destroyer. They keep calling him the Golden Demise, and various things like that. It had kind of a Lovecraftian feel to it, which I actually really liked, and kind of put Ghidorah on the same plane as something like a Cthulhu. And I liked this version of Ghidorah way more than I thought I would. Easily the best thing, probably the best thing in the whole anime trilogy is this version of Ghidorah. And initially, you know, you look at all the material for Godzilla King of the Monsters coming out later this year, and the pictures and everything of King Ghidorah, and it's like, this movie seems poised to give us the greatest King Ghidorah ever put on film, and this movie seems poised to give us a flying spaghetti monster. But seeing the flying spaghetti monster in action, I was like, you know what, this thing's actually pretty neat. I like a lot of the concepts at play here. The monster action itself, it's the only monster fight in the entire series, and it's not the most dynamic. It's not the most dynamic action, but I think it works. I think it works within the context of what they're doing here. So even though it's not like this amazing monster battle, thematically, I think it works within the context of the film, if that makes any sense. So yeah, Ghidorah might be the best thing in this whole anime trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. Now, other issues rear their ugly heads. You know, all that build up for Mothra, and all we see of Mothra is a shadow which appears to Haruo to tell him that Memphis is a bad guy, and that's it. And that's all Mothra does the entire film, and it's like, all that build up, and we don't even see Mothra, we just see a shadow, and it's like, oh my god, guys. Way to disappoint. Way to disappoint. Super disappointed. They couldn't have, like, Mothra, like, be, like, a spirit creature that could fight Ghidorah or something like that. Like, I don't know. They had different ideas in mind for this trilogy. But, yeah, I guess I won't talk about the ending so much. But it's the overall movie's got kind of a dark, like, nihilistic feel to it almost with the way it ends. And also, like, a weird, like, anti-technology message, which is kind of strange. You know, those of you who are supporters of science may not appreciate the message of the film, but it is kind of it was the most enjoyable of the 3 anime films. But one final complaint and one knock against this anime trilogy, you know, I talk about the pacing and how, like, it just felt like it was just moving at a snail's pace through 3 films. And looking at all 3 movies, I really do feel like you could have easily done all of this in one movie. Act 1, cut Planet of Monsters down to its bare bone essentials, end Act 1 with Godzilla Earth's arrival. And Act 2, Godzilla Earth is pursuing this band of survivors trying to get to safety. They stumble onto Mechagodzilla City, and then that gives them the weapon they need. And you could even say that they were searching, rewrite it in a way where they were searching for Mechagodzilla the whole time. And when they find Mechagodzilla, it's like, okay, now we can fight back. And you get Liquid Metal Mechagodzilla. I can't stress that enough, but Godzilla wins. It's like, oh shit, we're fucked. What do we do now? And then throughout the entire movie, you have Haruo and Metphis, because they've been going back and forth and interacting with each other throughout the entire trilogy. So you know that, and again, I figured it out fairly early on, that, and not that I'm a genius, like I think everybody who watched the movie that's a fan figured it out, but Metphis is a Ghidorah cult leader, and you could have kept that as a storyline running throughout the entire film, with the payoff being once Mechagodzilla is defeated, he's like, look, you can summon my god. I got this god here. And that would be the ultimate, like, Haruo, I would even gone as far to say where Haruo agreed to do it at first, because he's like Captain Ahab. He's so desperate and filled with hate to defeat Godzilla that he brings in Ghidorah, but then realizes that he fucked up and tries to make it right by taking down Metphis. And I think if you would cut out, trim the fat, maybe drop Mothra from the film entirely, because I can't figure out how to fit her in. Maybe expand the Planet of Monsters idea a little bit more, and maybe give us a little bit more of this world, like a herd of Rodans, or like, I don't know, put a bunch more like monsters in there. Maybe have Ghidorah, when he shows up, kill a bunch of the monsters like Rodan and Baragon and Anguirus and various other things, and just basically tell the whole story in one movie. This did not need to be 3 movies. Is basically my point, and you could have easily done this entire story in probably 1 hour-and-a-half, 2-hour movie instead of 3 hour-and-a-half long movies. It just felt like, because it just felt like it was moving at a snail's pace through most of it. So, on the anime trilogy, I know a lot of Godzilla fans weren't happy with these. There's a lot of disappointment regarding these, but what I will say, I don't hate them. I'm going to give Planet Eater a C. I think I've given all the anime films a C up to this point, but I think a lot of that also by, love of the brand more than anything else. But I do contend that Planet Eater is the best one of the 3. It's just, this probably could have been and should have been better, and I think I'll look back on it as something that's like, yeah, it had some neat ideas, and it tried, you know what it is? It's kind of like Beast Machines from Transformers. It's like Beast Machines is a perfect example of something like this, where a lot of fans hated Beast. I was on the net when Beast Machines came out. Fans hated it. Transformer fans were pissed at Beast Machines. I liked some of the ideas of what they were trying to do. And I could see, I liked the intent and the effort and the ideas more than the execution. I think that's the best way to sum it up. I appreciate what they were trying to do. I think some of the ideas were very interesting. There are some really, really cool moments. I think Godzilla Earth's introduction is one of the best scenes to ever feature Godzilla. I think the scene where Ghidorah is introduced in Planet Eater is an amazing scene. And not a traditional monster introduction, but very effective scene nonetheless. And so it's got some good things going for it, but just the execution's not great. So I don't hate them, but there'll be something I look back on as kind of a missed opportunity to do something really, really cool. Especially as the first, well, technically not the first Japanese animated Godzilla film. Well, film, yes, but they did do the Godzilla Land, but that's a whole other thing. I'm not even going to cover that. But, yeah, I mean, that's basically the anime trilogy. You just kind of shrug your shoulders at. I don't hate them, but I don't love them either, if that makes any sense. So, now that I've completed the anime trilogy, I can now just, hopefully that'll hold me over until Godzilla King of the Monsters comes out in May. God, that feels like it's such a long way off, but, God, I can't wait for that film. It looks like it's going to be freaking good, right? Looks like it's going to be really freaking good. But anyway, the other Netflix movie I saw was Bird Box, and you know me, you know I like horror movies. And I really liked A Quiet Place, so I thought, oh, okay, so basically doing A Quiet Place with, instead of hearing, it's sight that gets you killed by the monsters. So, okay, I'll give it a shot, and you got Sandra Bullock in it. I like Sandra Bullock in almost everything I've seen her in. I know she won a Razzie for a film, but I've never seen that film. So, I maintain I like Sandra Bullock in just about everything I've seen her in. And... with all the hype surrounding this movie, I thought, oh, well, I guess it must be really good if everybody's just kind of falling over themselves and memeing the holy hell out of it and hyping it up like nobody's business. I'm like, this must have been a really good movie. It's fine. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. I don't regret watching it. My biggest issue with it, it's one of those movies that goes between the past and the present throughout the entire film. And for some movies that works. I thought it worked very well for Oculus. I thought that format worked very, very well for Oculus. I don't think it works as well here because the stuff in the present, which is basically just blindfolded Sandra Bullock and two blindfolded kids in a boat going up a river trying to survive the evil monsters that kill them if they see them. And that, to me, was a lot more interesting, very unique setup. And I'm like, okay... That has potential for a lot of tension and a lot of intrigue and getting the most out of the least and more simplistic storytelling. And I'm like, see where this goes. This could be like really, really friggin' good if you do it right. The stuff from the past is literally every zombie movie you have ever seen ever before in the history of zombie movies. Only it doesn't have zombies in it. It's basically The Walking Dead with blindfolds. And that's what it is. And it doesn't add anything new to it. It's just a zombie movie. Even though it's technically not a zombie movie, it's formatted and structured almost identically like any other zombie movie. Think of it, any trope, any piece of drama, anything that goes wrong in the same way that you've seen in any other zombie movie. Same settings and ideas and story developments. Everything you have seen in zombie movies is all in that, like, early timeline, those portions of the movie. And I feel like you didn't really need all that material. I felt like anything that needed to be filled in, you could have done it visually, or you could have just done quick flashbacks. And I think that would have been more effective. But I think keeping them on the boat would have been had a lot more of that claustrophobic feel to it that I like from movies like Rope. Like, Rope is one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. And the whole thing takes place in one room. It's freaking great. I think it's his most underrated film. Very tense, very dramatic film. 12 Angry Men, perfect example. It's just 12 guys in a room yelling at each other. Very tense, very dramatic. And in horror, I think there's plenty of room to do things like this, where it's, confined space and very simplistic storytelling. And I'll note this right here. It is kind of a spoiler, but I'll note it right here. They never do explain what the monsters are. Because apparently there's these things out there that if you see it, you go insane and you try to kill yourself. Or you go insane and you try to hurt other people. We never find out what it is or what's going on. We never see what it is that we're not supposed to see. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because in movies like this, I think, especially in horror, I think not knowing makes it more interesting. Because I think back to It, the original... Well, let's do the TV version of It, where it's in the book too. I believe it's in the book. I've never read It, now that I think about it. Huh. But I'm going to assume this was the ending in the book too. In the ending where it's revealed that Pennywise is actually an alien spider. It's like, that's so dumb. I liked it before, where we didn't know where the clown was coming from, and that was at least slightly more interesting. You didn't need to reveal what exactly this entity was. And sometimes the mystery is scary. Like, if you have mystery around something, that makes it scarier. So I don't mind that we didn't get answers for any of that. That didn't bother me at all. My concern was more like pacing and tension, because every time the stuff on the boat is really good. And every time they cut back to the past, I'm like, oh my God, no, keep it on the boat. That's the good stuff. That's your money. That's your grade A horror movie stuff right there. It's stuff on the boat. That's where you're going to mine. I think that's the stuff where the movie gets the most creative. That's the stuff where the movie is its most tense and has most of the good scenes in it. And everything else, it's like, it's not bad. It's just, I've seen it a million times. This is nothing new in the world of horror movies are, again, it's like zombie movies without zombies, basically. Walking Dead with blindfolds. That's basically what those earlier portions are. The actors are all fine. Sandra Bullock, again, I enjoy her in just about everything I've seen her in, but it's, you know, the movie overall was fine. I don't regret watching it, but I don't really see what the big deal is either. Don't know how this got memed to holy hell like it did. Although, you idiots that were doing the Bird Box challenge, please knock that off. That's stupid. That's really fucking stupid. And Netflix should not be held responsible for your own stupidity. That's all I'll say on the matter. So yeah, Bird Box, it's probably worth checking out. I don't think you'll regret watching it. I don't regret watching it, but I didn't think it was the be-all, end-all either. I thought it was just a perfectly fine film, but probably could have been much better if they didn't do the past and present jumping back and forth thing, and instead just kept them mostly on the boat. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. And with that, I think I have talked long enough. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And I'll have more content lined up for you guys in the near future. But again, keep in mind the move kind of might slow things down a little bit. But I'm going to try and get things out to you guys because I love you guys and I'm looking out for you. So that is all I have for now. Time to say goodnight. Time to say goodbye. And I'll see you all later.